Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So before we start, can I just say a massive freaking thank you for 10,000. 10,000. What? Like literally what? I just want to say like such a thank you to you all because like it just means so much to me basically, and I'm not very good at being like all like mushy etc, but thank you so much. Like literally to anyone who's subscribed recently, thank you. To people who have been subscribed for years, thank you. Like I couldn't have done it without you. I'm just so happy and chuffed, and yeah, just thank you. Because I hit 10k, I really want to do a giveaway, so that should be going up in the next few weeks. Let me know any like things that you want to do, because I've got two things in mind. I kind of asked on my Instagram and some people had some really good like suggestions, so yeah, let me know what you think I should include. Like obviously I'm not rich enough to be able to give away like an iPad, which I could, you know, buy that, but like comment any information below because I will do that. But yeah, I just want to make it more like tailored towards us and like what this channel's about. Very much like self-care, like self-development, growth, kind of luxury, we're important, that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? I think you do. I trust you guys. Anyway, today is my third episode in my like true crime mystery thing, and today's case is a mystery. It's actually one of the most bizarre ones ever, and it's even been dubbed like Europe's biggest mystery. So without further ado, let's get into it. So this is the missing person case of Juan Pedro Martinez. But this case actually takes place in Spain. It was around 60 miles north of the capital of Madrid on June the 25th, 1987. So a massive freak accident took place on this day at around 6 AM in the Sierra mountain range. There was a Volvo F2 truck and it had 3 tankers on the back, and it was speeding downhill at around 85 miles per hour. So there wasn't loads of people driving at this time, as it was around 6 in the morning. Many people thought that this person obviously had a real struggle with their brakes and it just wasn't working. There was enough people to kind of cause a bit of havoc. This truck actually knocked a wind mirror off one of the cars and then rammed right into the back of another van, forcing them to get off the road. However, the truck came to a curve in the road and actually collided with 2 other cars. It overturned and the contents of both the tanker and the truck spilled out everywhere. To make matters even worse though, the tanker was actually filled with 20,000 litres of sulfuric acid. And when this mixed with the dew from the grass, it just created a massive fire. Road rescue actually rushed to the area, and as soon as they got there, they found 2 fatalities, which were the man and the woman who were in the truck, which was driving uncontrollably. Everyone else though managed to survive with just injuries, and to be honest all they could do is try and put out the fire, so they put out like lime and tried to neutralize all the acid, because obviously sulfuric acid is not good for humans, just not good. Like I said, despite there being only 3 vehicles involved in the crash, everyone except for the 2 in the truck survived. The 2 fatalities at the scene were 36-year-old Andres Martinez, who was the driver of the truck, and 34-year-old Carmen Gomez, who was in the passenger seat, and when found both bodies were corroded with acid at this point. So while all this mayhem was going on, the civil guard at the time actually contacted Carmen's mum to tell her that her daughter and her son-in-law had died. But this is where the case gets crazy. So when the civil guard contacted the mum, she was obviously devastated, but her first question after being told the news was, "Is my grandson okay?" She told the civil guard that her 10-year-old grandson, Juan Pedro Martinez, was actually travelling with his mum and dad on this particular day, and she wanted to know whether he'd survived the accident. But no child, dead or alive, was actually found at the scene. So that kind of covers the event that took place. This is like where the mystery starts basically. But I want to give you a little bit of background on the family themselves. So Juan Pedro Martinez was a 10-year-old boy who lived in Murcia, which is in the south of Spain, and he was the only child to his parents. The drive they took that day was a very long one, and Juan had actually accompanied his father on trips before because that was his dad's job, to make like travels, drop things off, take them back. but never in one this long. I think this gives like an idea of like what a sweet child he must have been. He made his dad promise that if he got good grades in school, that he and his dad would go on a trip together, and on the way back they would visit the Basque countryside, which is just like really nice countryside in Spain. Where Juan was from, it's pretty arid and like almost semi-desert like, and it was quoted that he said he just wants to see cows grazing in the grass, which I just think is just so sweet. He'd never actually been out of his hometown before this trip, and this trip was actually a 9.5-hour journey, so it was a long one. So in the days before the crash took place, Andreas asked Carmen to accompany them. Some places it says that it could be like a family excursion, other places it says to kind of help him look after Juan, because obviously this is a 9.5-hour journey and, you know, kids get bored. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a timeline of what happened on that day. So the family left the day before, and at 7 p.m. they arrived in a nearby town to pick up the tanker in order to go on their trip. At 12:12 a.m. Andreas actually stopped and they had a nap. At 3 a.m. they picked up petrol or gas, whatever you want to call it. And then at 5:30 a.m. was the last time the family was seen together all alive. The biggest thing to remember was Juan was actually present at this point. At 5:30 a.m. the waiter remembers serving the family 2 coffees and 1 cake, and he said that there was no kind of suspicious thing around them. They just seemed very normal. They had their food, they paid, they got up and they left in the tanker. So it all seems pretty normal, right? But then the fact that Juan was not actually physically at the scene of the crime just trips me out. Before I go into theories about what happened, because there isn't much else to go on, this is why this case is so peculiar, because there's so many unanswered questions. I just want to mention some really odd things which I think will be important later on about what happened on that day. After the crash took place, the police actually checked the tachometer that was in the vehicle that Andreas was driving. So a tachometer is like, it just kind of regulates what's going on in the car, in the engine, like what speed they get up to, if the car stops, how long the car stops. It's just that kind of thing. It just regulates and keeps track of what's going on in the car. And the tachometer actually revealed some really weird data. Basically, like I said, they were traveling through a mountain pass. So mountain pass go, you know, up and down. On the way up the mountain, just remember that, just 23 minutes before the crash took place, the family only travelled 9 miles, and during that 9 miles, they stopped 12 times. All the stops were really, really brief, the shortest one lasting just a second, the last and the longest one being at 22 seconds. Now, I just find this so bizarre. Like, I just don't understand it. First of all, driving up a mountain is hard enough. I think, I don't drive, but I can imagine it's hard enough, let alone with a truck and like 3 massive tanker things on the back of you. So that I find really odd. But also, why would you stop so many times? Like, there must have been something at this point which happened in order for you to stop 12 times and then restart. So this isn't just they slow down, they fully stop and restart, and I can imagine that restarting a tanker on a bloody mountainside is very, very difficult, even for like a skilled driver, do you know what I mean? Also, I just want to mention before anyone says, there was actually no traffic at this time. It was 6 a.m. in the morning, so traffic was very light at this point, so that would not have been a reason for the stopping of the car. Like, they weren't in traffic and having to stop and start. Also, even more weird, so the man who I mentioned before who had his car rammed by Andreas's truck and pushed off the road actually stayed on the side of the road and kind of observed what happened, and he found something very, very odd. Basically, immediately after the crash, a white Nissan Vanette van stopped by his vehicle. So that doesn't sound weird, but you know, let me get into it. The man had a mustache and was described to have like a foreign accent, and he was also accompanied with a blonde woman who he said was his wife and is actually a nurse. There was also reportedly an elderly woman in the back. Some places I've read have no mention of the elderly woman, some places do, so I'm going to presume that there probably was an old lady in the back. The foreign man with the mustache told the guy who'd been run off the road to not worry, that his wife was a nurse, but his wife only looked over his injuries very, very briefly before driving off, and then this man could not see where they went afterwards. However, there was also another sighting of this couple, and this was made by 2 shepherds who were nearby the scene as well. They said that they saw a really, really tall man with a mustache and a blonde lady driving a white Nissan van pull up to Andreas's truck and take something from the truck. They said they didn't know what was taken, but they assumed it was a package, like a package size thing, which very, very odd. After this though, the police could not track down the couple and they weren't seen or heard from again. Now let's get into some theories about the case, because this case has so many theories, like literally so many theories. I think because it's so like bold and people don't really understand what's going on, people get their minds working and they've figured some stuff out. So instantly, like I said, the police's theory for what happened on that day was that it was a freak accident. They believed that Andreas's brakes must have been broken and he just lost control and went straight down that hill. This theory also believes that Juan was actually not present at the scene because he was dissolved in the sulfuric acid that splashed everywhere and caused that massive fire. This is obviously the easiest route to go down, you know, some people might believe this, but the majority of people do not believe this theory, and that's because there's so many plot holes in it. So first of all, when the truck was actually checked over, there was nothing wrong with Andreas's brakes, like nothing. They were working perfectly fine, so no one can really understand why he was driving at such a high and uncontrollable rate. Second point is, it would literally be impossible for Juan's body to have dissolved so quickly. Sulfuric acid is capable of dissolving a human body, however I'm pretty sure it doesn't dissolve things like rubber and plastic. So even if it did dissolve Juan's body, which it couldn't have, because I researched like how long it actually takes, and to dissolve like a pack of meat, like, you know, like a steak or something, it would probably take around 2 weeks, and the road rescue team were there very quickly. So I don't believe that he was dissolved, but even if he was, there would be some kind of remains of him, like his shoes, because if they had like rubber soles or buttons, or even if the skin was very much corroded, teeth and bone would literally take so much longer to dissolve. Like if it takes 2 weeks for meat, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have been dissolved in a few hours. Like, you know, count me if I'm wrong, but I'm just guessing. Also, Juan's parents weren't even dissolved. Their bodies had been touched with like acid, like it had acid corrosion marks on it, but they weren't dissolved. So how would they still be present even after like a massive fire and Juan have literally no physical evidence of ever being there? The theory though that leads on from this is that Juan actually did get splashed with acid, and in doing so he ran down the road and there was like a nearby mountain stream, and he washed himself to try and like get all the burning sensation off him, either died on the way there or got like taken away with the stream. But again, I just really don't understand this theory, because firstly, like, he's 10. I feel like after such a traumatic event he would be less likely to leave his parents. I don't know, he might be, but I feel like most 10-year-olds, no matter how much pain they're in, would want the comfort of their parents. But also, like, he's never been out of his hometown, so how would he have known that there was a stream? Like when I was 10, I would not know that there's like mountain streams. I would have just probably stayed put. But also the police investigation and search party actually spanned a radius of 20 miles around the area, and Juan was nowhere to be found. I feel like they would have found a body. I just doubt that he would have went missing from that theory. They also released dogs and they too could not pick up the scent of Juan, so I don't know, I think that just kind of debunks this theory. Even though the whole crash and event was really, really chaotic, I can imagine, no eyewitnesses said they saw any sign of children at the scene. I feel like if Juan was there, they would either like hear a child crying or would have seen him run or seen where he'd gone to. I just think that's very important to remember, is that they don't even remember seeing him when the crash happened. So this is where the theories get way more elaborate, and the biggest thing that kind of spurs these theories on is the 12 stops that Andreas made before the crash. This, just for a lot of people, is evidence that Juan was actually kidnapped during these stops. The theory goes that someone was driving in front of Andreas and was purposely stopping to kind of alarm and frustrate Andreas and forcing him to stop. And the last time when Andreas had to slam on the brakes, someone ran out of the car, and during the 22 seconds that the car was stopped, Juan was actually kidnapped. This theory sounds crazy, but it would explain as to why Andreas drove at such an erratic rate after this, because he was obviously maybe trying to chase down the car in front to get Juan back. I still find the 12 stops very peculiar, but this is actually a theory that even Carmen and Andreas's family themselves believe. There is a theory that I am going to mention, but I really don't believe, which is that Carmen and Andreas actually killed Juan and disposed of the body and then drove off and caused the crash, and it was all kind of a red herring to, you know, ignore the fact that Juan was dead. I know that a lot of missing, like long-term missing children, there is a majority percentage that are killed by their parents, but I don't feel like every child that goes missing necessarily is down to their parents. Like, nothing in their lives indicate kind of abuse or psychopathic tendencies. Like, there was no suspicious activity from them or from other people, no one at Juan's school. Like, nothing indicates that. It's a very like loving idea to take a child like away on a business trip for doing well in school, and I just don't think them two collaborate. Obviously though, this is a theory that a lot of people believe just because it is kind of the pattern that goes on with mystery. It is a possibility that Carmen and Andreas actually did harm Juan and then dispose of the body, or, you know, something happened along the way. But again, like, I don't want this to be biased, but I just think the 12 stops and then the erratic behaviour after just to me indicates they didn't care if they were going to be caught. They didn't, it was kind of like a frantic, impulsive reaction. I feel like if something had happened to Juan beforehand and they had, you know, dumped his body somewhere, I really don't think they would want to like draw attention to themselves. So that's just kind of my thoughts on that theory. I just don't think it really makes much sense. There's not like loads of evidence, but again, there are always possibilities. So my next theory actually stems from a discovery which was made 1 year after the crash took place. The civil guard really wanted to delve deeper into the case, so they decided to really look into the truck itself. Now, the truck had 3 compartments and only 2 of them were filled with sulfuric acid. The other compartment actually had a large amount of heroin in it, and this heroin was all like bundled up in a blanket. So there was actually an investigation into Andreas, but nothing could actually tie them to any type of drug business or, you know, criminal enterprise. There was just no traces of that. But further investigation actually uncovered from Andreas's family, so like firsthand, they told the police the mafia had been hassling Andreas for a few weeks prior to the crash, and they wanted him to smuggle the drugs for him. And this leads me on to my next theory, which is probably the most notorious of them all. A lot of people believe that the whole thing was actually a drug-related accident, you know, not necessarily an accident, could be an accident, could not be. Let me tell you more. So there are kind of 2 theories that are intertwined to this. So the first one is that people tried to coerce Andreas into taking and delivering the drugs whilst he was making his way up the hill, and that's the reason for the 12 stops, was that he was either being constantly kind of hassled into taking them, but that's when the agreement or whatever took place. They also believe that this is the point where Juan goes. So a lot of people think that the drug runners actually took Juan as collateral. So they might have threatened Andreas and said, if you don't deliver these drugs to this destination by this time, we're taking Juan. So they took him and they said, when you deliver the drugs, that's when we will, you know, give Juan back. There is a part of this which is obviously very believable. It's believable, you know, it was the 80s at the time, drug running. It was a massive thing in Europe and Spain especially, but I just don't think that having a kidnapped child hostage in your car is any better than having drugs. Like, children can like speak and like draw attention, so if they did get stopped by the police for any reason, Juan could easily have just said like, look, I'm kidnapped. Well, obviously a lot more enthusiastic than that, but drugs don't make noise. That's what I'm trying to say. Drugs don't escape from your car. Also the jail time for like kidnapping a child and drugs, you know, like, oh, you've like got some drugs on you, oh, you kidnapped a child, like obviously you're gonna get way more jail time for that. And that's what, for me, just doesn't make any sense. However, the other theory that kind of leads on from the original drug one is that Andreas also was in on it. He agreed to take the drugs. So we don't actually know if Andreas knew himself whether there was drugs or not in the trunk, but this theory kind of pretends that he does. This theory would actually explain as to why Andreas took Juan and Carmen with him on this trip, Either he didn't want to leave them home alone in case anything did go wrong, and then they would be targeted by the mafia or whoever else. But also it's kind of the, have you ever seen the We're the Millers? That's what I think anyway, is that if he did know, it would be a lot less suspicious if there was a family, you know, like a wife, child, husband, you know, nuclear family in the car. Police would be a lot less suspicious of them smuggling drugs as opposed to maybe a car full of younger, you know, stereotypical drug dealers. That could be a reason as to why the whole family for the first time went on this excursion. I think the eyewitnesses' account actually kind of back up this theory and just enhance it even more, because a lot of people actually think that the two people, the man and the woman, the blonde one, the foreign man, were actually probably involved in the mafia as well. And when they were picking up the package, they were either one, picking up some drugs from the car, because the police found a certain amount of drugs, but there could have been more. But other people also think that maybe this couple actually picked up Juan at this point. And the motive for this is very, very weird. If it was Juan who was taken and kidnapped at this point, then there's not really like a bad motive for it. The only thing people can really come up with is that the couple might have wanted to take him to hospital like really quickly and, you know, helped him out. They could have been good people, but then something bad happened on the way, like he died. They had to dispose of his body at this point, because if that is the case, if that is actually what happened, I just find the couple's input very odd. I don't really understand what it is. But if Juan was taken at this point, where is he? Where is he? And I just don't really think that a couple taking a child to hospital and then in due course disposing of a dead body if he did die work together. Do you know what I mean? Like that, they just don't fit. They don't fit. They're completely two different shoes. They don't look good on. They're not right. Do you know what I mean? They just don't work. So the final theory leads on from the kidnapping theory, as the kidnapping theory seems to be most popular. Obviously there's a lot of different kind of, some people think it's to do with the mafia, could just be a random kidnapping. A report was made to the police a year after the crash took place in 1987. A driving school teacher said that an elderly woman and a young boy of around 10 or 11 entered his workplace in downtown Madrid. According to him, the woman was old and blind and foreign, and she was asking for directions to the American embassy. She was accompanied by the young boy, who actually looked very disorientated at that time. The elderly woman said she just escaped from Iran and had actually been living off charity the whole time. However, the boy spoke Spanish, but actually had an accent which would link him to the place that Juan Pedro Martinez was from, as they all have different accents in Spain. It's like in England, but this specific accent is like exactly from the south of Spain. And the teacher actually asked the old lady about the boy and asked if he was okay. The woman completely changed the subject and left. After seeing Juan's picture on TV though, the man believed that the boy he saw that day was Juan Pedro. Juan's family actually really want this theory to be true, because if it is, it means that Juan is still alive. And I don't know, this theory just kind of adds to it a bit more, because if you remember, there was actually apparently an elderly woman in the back of the couple's car on the day of the crash, and a lot of people think that the elderly lady is actually the same person. So who knows, who knows. So guys, that is the case. That's the whole thing. This just really like stumps me, this case. I don't know, I don't know what to think. I think the drug one is most likely, just because apparently he was involved in the mafia, etc. But the 12 stops, man, I feel like the 12 stops just indicate that there was something so wrong and weird. Why would you stop 12 times uphill and then proceed at 85 miles per hour? That is just fucked up. Like, I don't know why. I just don't know. I feel like the 12 stops makes this whole case even odder. Really would love to know what you guys said. Like, your feedback on my last video was great, and I just really enjoyed reading all the comments. But yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any theories of your own, or just like what you found very weird or something important. Also, if I've left out any information, please comment it down below, but obviously be polite. I can't explain everything. I've tried my hardest. But I really hope you enjoyed today's video. But other than that, I shall see you all in my next video. Bye!